On October 15, the International Monetary Fund did release a press release saying and claiming that now China is the first economic power in the world. This is an exploding news. But even this news is exploding, they didn't even mention it widely in the United States, nor in Europe, neither in China. But it does modify the balance of powers in the world, not only economically, but also diplomatically, politically, and in the domain of finance. In the recent years, and because, as you know, the financial markets are essential to the United States, they create the condition of the wealth of the US economy, where the financial markets fund all the big corporations in the United States. They have this regulation with the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, which was created after the crisis of 1929 to avoid a new crisis, where the SEC is the police officer of the New York Stock Exchange and the Nasdaq and the financial markets. So, for the United States, using the SEC means telling the small investors and the large banks from the US, but from all over the world, that the financial markets in the United States are safe, since the financial law, the regulation of the securities in the United States, and the action of the SEC are very efficient. China has observed this phenomenon, and China has observed also the huge amounts of money transiting through the financial markets in the US. So, China has developed a set of financial laws which are very similar to the US laws about securities and bonds and treasuries. And they apply to Chinese companies listed in the stock exchanges of Hong Kong and Shanghai. So it was, just an imitation of the financial law of the United States. But in the past 3 to 5 years, there have been some kind of complications. The big accounting firms like Accenture and others, which are deemed to verify the accounting of the large international corporations, especially for their listing in the financial markets, these big accounting firms have to report to the SEC. And the SEC has the right to request very precise information about the corporations that these big accounting firms are auditing. This is normal procedure, normal business. What is new is that some of the major Chinese corporations operating in China and overseas are listed both in the United States and in Shanghai or in Beijing, in Shanghai and Hong Kong. And the SEC was requesting those corporations to reveal some information about their finances. These Chinese corporations didn't want to, and they refused. So then the SEC asked the big accounting firms to disclose this information. And SEC said, if you don't disclose this information to us, you may go to jail, you may be sued, and some of your executives may go to jail. So these accounting firms, also some of their subsidiaries are based in China, just to audit the Chinese corporation, were just to comply. But then the Chinese equivalent of the SEC and the Chinese government say no. Those are secret information about the finances of Chinese corporation. Under Chinese financial law, if you do release this information to the SEC, you may be considered as criminal and you may go to jail in China. On the other hand, Accenture and other big accounting firms were put in the dilemma whether to go to jail in the US for not giving the information to the SEC, or whether to go to jail to China for divulging the information to the SEC. So China just wanted to make a point that from now on, from this time, China is as important as in the United States for the financial markets. And they made their point. They just succeeded. Which is that after a few years of battle, there was, of course, negotiation between the US government and the Chinese government through their authorities of markets, and they came to an agreement where part of the information was to be released to the SEC and part of the information was to be kept secret. In any case, China won. And now China is not only the first economic power in the world, but it's becoming the equivalent power in finance as the United States, and maybe in the future, the first financial power in the world.